Welcome to the Jude's podcast. Before we get started with today's guest, do you want to share the good news about the Jude's frozen meals?
Yeah, I'm just really in love with them.
They're so good, actually.
They are. We went on holidays recently down the East Coast, and I took 6 meals, and they just lasted forever.
Yeah.
With it, because each meal is designed for 2 people.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. I didn't have to cook for I think it was 3 nights.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. We had some with my in-laws and they absolutely loved it.
Yeah, the food's just delish.
Yeah, and we're not just saying that because we're biased, although we clearly are biased, but it really is good. But the other cool thing that we did about it, which we weren't planning on talking about, was how we sent some care packages over to our friends in Victoria.
We did send some care packages.
Yeah, who were in the middle of this lockdown. So for them, they just received these, like half a dozen of these meals, frozen meals, and I think they were pretty blown away.
Yeah, well, it'd be a nice treat, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So the good news is that you guys can purchase them, but you can also we can also deliver them anywhere on the sort of east coast of Australia at the moment. So if you head over to our website at judescafe.com.au, all the info's there.
Yeah, and also the money also goes to supporting youth, which is why we interviewed. Had a conversation with Will.
Yeah, so today's guest is Will Smith. You might have seen him. He's a local celebrity at the moment. He's getting around everywhere. We filmed this podcast a little while ago, but since then he's been on the project. He's been absolutely everywhere. He's doing amazing things with disadvantaged young people.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. What did you like about this conversation?
I think I loved his commitment, a bit like Danny and Janie.
They were both excellent, by the way.
Really committed to community. And I think in this day and age, it's really hard to find people who are so committed to somebody else, I suppose, in the way that they are, the amount of time that they give. And also I just loved Will, he just advocates and champions kids and you don't get it much better than that.
Yeah, I just really enjoy his energy.
Yeah.
His energy to make a difference in the community, in people's lives. And I think there's plenty more stories that he could have shared, but
we'll get him back again.
Yeah, it was a pretty special episode.
It was a special episode.
So with that, I hope you guys enjoy. Will, it's so good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Did you know that Will shared his nachos with me at lunchtime today?
No, I did not.
It's the first thing I've eaten in Jude's Cafe that I didn't finish, only because I was full. So I felt bad leaving some on the plate.
I was just shocked that you weren't eating the squid.
Yeah, well, I actually intended to come in. You ask everyone. I told about 5 people on my way in that I was coming to eat the squid, and then I saw the nachos plated up, and I was committed to the cause. I was committed.
I like the bao buns.
Yeah, I heard that you like the bao bun, so I had some. I'm a big fan, except the actual bun. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had that before.
Wow.
So it tastes good. I just don't know how good it is for my figure. I don't have the best metabolism at the moment, so I've been eating a lot of junk food.
That's fair enough.
Wow, you look pretty fit.
Yeah, that's because I put a lot of effort in. I eat a lot, but I try and work it off.
So you're wearing JCP all over you. I'd love to hear the story of how JCP started.
It is a big story, but it's not really.
Go for it. We've got time. It's fun.
Cool. So I've been doing youth programs for about 10 years through a number of not-for-profits, mainly Edmund Rice camps. I've done some work through Camp Quality, Make-A-Wish, but primarily those youth programs have been targeted towards at-risk youth. So about a year ago, I connected with a number of young people across the state. We were running some programs through some different organisations and also just through myself. And I just decided that the impact wasn't big enough. It wasn't as genuine as what I wanted it to be. I was probably being restricted in a few different ways. So I wanted to, I knew that if I could create my own organisation, that I could have the impact that I wanted. And it could be bounded by the rules that I set, that we could keep kids on for a lot longer and push them out at the other end when we were really happy that impact had happened.
Yeah.
So JCP was formed about a year ago, based on my built up need to want to run programs that had more of a genuine impact, I feel. Yeah.
So there was a frustration there for you.
It wasn't so much a frustration. It was just more of I kept hitting a dead end.
It was a longing for more.
Yeah, we were running programs constantly and kids were coming and they were being so inspired and they loved the content and loved the people and the environment. And then they would leave and it was like we wouldn't see some of the kids again. Some of them would come back because they had the right referral agency. Like it was all dependent on who the support services were around the kid instead of the actual child themselves. So JCP is, we don't work with, as many kids as a lot of organisations would, but we really invest our time in the kids that we do work with.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's sort of the secret formula, I suppose, or the point of difference for this program as opposed to stuff you've done in the past.
Yeah. I call it genuine impact. We can have, we can be a presence in a kid's life, we can have an impact, but unless it's genuine, then, unless we're really changing an action, unless that child's leaving and creating action in their environment, then all we're doing is just being a presence in their lives, which that's not a bad thing either. It's not bad to be a presence, but just for me personally, I invest a lot of time in the programs and I like to see that genuine impact being had.
In our context at Tares, I suppose, we talk about something similar, and we talk about how most of the time life change or changing the trajectory of a young person's life happens through relationship as opposed to just program.
Yeah, 100%.
It's much the same sort of thing.
It is much the same. So we run anything from a school leadership day in a school setting, and we're only there for a day. But for us, we're giving kids who are in a school setting that ability to receive some of our content. But what those school programs do allows us to work with those at-risk and vulnerable kids after school, on weekends and during school holidays, to really make sure that content which is relevant to the kids in a school is being really relevant to the kids that actually need it.
That's good. And I've got the great pleasure of being able to meet some of your young people recently.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the two boys that we originally met, they've been with JCP since the beginning, which has been pretty inspiring. There's a few boys that were there right at the start.
Yeah.
And they're good kids.
You would have loved meeting them, Shaz. We got to play Monopoly Deal.
My favourite game. I've still got a pack. I always have a Monopoly Deal pack in my car. Always.
I think you're still undefeated.
I am an undefeated champion of Monopoly Deal. Anyone 1v1 take me on because I am ready.
Do you cheat?
I have cheated once, but I still easily would have won that game, I'm pretty sure. It was just, we actually play a version of the game where if you can cheat and get away with it, it's allowed. We don't play that all the time, but we do play it as it's fun when if someone's not looking or paying attention, you can swipe a card and put it in your stack. The good thing about that is that I really dislike playing board games with people that aren't interested. And so it keeps everyone on par and interested. Everyone's invested in the game. So it's probably a better version to play.
Oh, dear.
The funny strategy he used whilst I was there, these boys are speaking their fourth language?
Yeah, fourth language.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so he's here, it's their turn, and he's here telling them to, asking them questions to share their story with me, so they're distracted. Meanwhile, he can just dominate the game because they're not even thinking about it.
That is a two-way street though, because they quite often will speak in their own language, cutting deals and doing things, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out what's happening around the table. So I throw my ploys into the game, and they quite regularly throw their ploys in as well.
So how did you get interested in youth?
So when I was 15, I attended St Patrick's College in Launceston. Grade 9 for me, leading right up through high school, grade 9, I was an active student. I wasn't very good sitting in a classroom environment. I wasn't academically minded, although I did, and I was respectful and I tried to be the best version of myself. I loved football. Although I wasn't that good at it, I loved it. I loved watching it, playing it. I'd go to school to be more social than be there for the academic side of things. So when I turned 15, I know that I was, people saw some potential in me, and one lady in particular, her name was Anne Viney. I remember distinctively going to an assembly, and I was sitting at the back and flicking paper at people and being stupid, whatever a grade 9 student does. And I remember in that assembly, there was a guy that came and spoke about how you could volunteer time and help at-risk kids during the holidays. And it was a bit of a corny subject at the time, and I wasn't really paying attention. And then my name got written down on the sign-in sheet. And Anne Viney told me that I had to go to this meeting, and I went to the meeting, and I ended up getting signed on to a summer camp. Which was pretty cool because I'd never been on a summer camp before, but at the time it was totally uncool to give up a week of your holidays to go away with at-risk kids. It was people that age consider volunteering your time to be an uncool thing.
Yeah.
But I committed to it and I went on the program. I went with a friend, which made it a lot easier, and pretty much everyone else was from my school but were not people that I interacted with at all. I was young myself, and those programs, you get partnered one-on-one with a kid for 5 days.
Whoa.
From the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep.
That's intense.
My child was, I think he was 11, and he arrived with his dad. He had shaved head. It was, it was dyed black on the top. He had big stretched ears.
Yeah.
He had piercings in his face. And he looked scary. And I was like, what am I doing? And then by the end of the 5 days, me and this kid just were like best mates. And I just remember leaving the program. I wasn't the most disengaged kid at home, but a lot of the time, 3 words that I spoke to my parents were like, good. So like, how was your day? Good. How was footy training? Good. How are your mates? Good. And like, not much. That was all I said to my parents. You know, what are you up to this weekend? Not much. What did you do at school? Not much. But I remember coming home distinctively from this program and just being like, that was amazing. I remember telling my parents about this kid. I remember telling them about, you know, how it was such a cool experience. And I continued doing those programs for a couple of years before I started to develop my own programs and ideas and concepts about how I could make them bigger and better. And but that one camp, it was at Orford, Spring Beach, Orford in Tassie, and I'll never forget it. It was definitely a moment where I came back and I was like, that's what I want to do. Like that's where that's the direction I want to head.
Yeah. We were just I was just sharing some research about how it's hard for young people to find purpose without serving. So when we serve, when we volunteer and there's nothing coming back, but it's just a plain service, there's something mystical or magical that happens in that space where we actually discover a lot of our purpose. And so it sounds like by being hooked into this space where you had to volunteer and serve somebody else, in that space, you actually got the bigger gift.
100%, yeah.
Because you actually discovered a large part of who you are and how you're wired and what your future was going to look like.
I relate to that so much, and it comes down to, I always say to people, like, you have this generic term, like I've been doing these youth programs for over 10 years, and so people are like, oh, you're such a nice guy and you're such a good bloke, and it's like, and it really wears thin because it is to the point where I'm not doing it because I don't receive anything in return. Like it's in a way, it's selfish for me because I get so much from doing these programs. Like literally everything that's happened to me that has been what some would consider somewhat success over the last 10 years has all been driven through youth programs and working with young people and walking away feeling inspired and going, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. And, you know, I feel confident enough to go and, you know, achieve this because I've walked away with this feeling that is like, you know, you made a genuine impact or a genuine difference. It's probably not the right word to use, but it's selfish in a way, the programs that I've been a part of, because, you know, I get so much. Sometimes I leave a program and I'm like, I'm pretty sure I got more from that than what the kid did. So, and even that very first program, I still think that young boy I was partnered with for a week, who I never communicated with him ever again. That was the only program he did. When I became a police officer, I was walking down the Devonport Mall one day and he called out to me. He was 18 at the time and I was 20-something. And we re-engaged then at that time when he was 18. And he still remembers everything about that program.
Wow. So it's impacting on him.
It was
too.
a massive impact on him, but I still remembered everything about the program as well. And I was like, well, that's had the exact same impact on me. So, yeah, it's selfish in a way, but.
One of the things I love about your programs, though, is that you've taken this principle about how when you serve others, you find a little bit more about yourself and you improve yourself. You've taken that principle and applied that to the way that you run your programs for young people. So you've got young people who are at risk, vulnerable young people, serving other young people, and then that's where the magic happens.
100%. And that's the gift because young people, especially. I mean, I don't consider myself to be an at-risk young person when I was 15, and I even if I was, I didn't consider that my personal circumstances to be that much different from those around me. But that experience changed a lot about me. And so for me, the young people we work with who are considered at risk or vulnerable, these young people come into programs and genuinely believe that they can't have an impact on the world. Yeah. And it only takes our belief in them that we've had 3 young boys over the last 10 months raise $50,000 for people in need across the state.
That's unreal. That's so cool.
A youth council that's developing a bullying campaign for a school that's, planning to work in a homeless kitchen in Devonport. We've got boys that have given out $20,000 worth of brand new shoes, only because they've been inspired by us saying you're a leader and you have the potential to impact, you have the potential to change the world. Yeah. And these kids just grab hold of that. Yeah. And they run with it. And it just goes to show that young people don't need a badge or a title to show leadership in their life. Leadership is 100%. Purely just shown through action. And that's our biggest teaching, is that leadership is action alone. We can stand up in front of our whole school and provide a speech, but unless our actions follow it, then we're not a leader. And a young person who's sitting at the back of the assembly that is considered to be a person that hasn't gifted those around them, that person only needs to step up and do something good for them to be a leader. It's as simple as that. All our programs are based around action and action within the community. And of course, it's positive action, not negative. So it does. It correlates into everything from, we have young people that visit aged care homes and just sit there and share stories with elderly residents. And these are young people who, would be looked at by those around them going, there's no way that kid would do that. So, it's pretty powerful.
So the power of belief is, it is really powerful, isn't it? So what we say, what we think
100%.
About young people is really, really, really important. And that's something for every person in our community.
100%.
For us to each to understand that
100%.
if we could just be really positive about young people, speak positivity over young people, even when they're acting out.
Yep, especially when they're acting out.
To see something different, to call out something different within them, something that maybe isn't yet in existence, but it's there dormant, and to call that out is powerful.
Yeah, we use it's a very short story, but I use a terminology with all the volunteers or people that want to come work with JCP, and it's as simple as there's this town that hasn't had any rain for years and years, and they're going through a dreadful drought. Everyone, they're desperate for water. And all of a sudden this man arrives and he says, tomorrow it's going to rain. All you have to do is pray to God. It's going to rain tomorrow. You just have to pray to God. And so everyone goes and prays to God, and they have this massive big prayer session. And then the next day, everyone walks out to the field and they look up and it starts to rain. But out of everyone standing in the field, there's only one boy that brought an umbrella. And it's a corny story, but it shows that of those people, only one person truly believed that it was going to rain. Otherwise, everyone else would have prepared for it. And so I speak with our facilitators and our volunteers about, we have to believe that these young people are leaders. We can't just say it to them. If we want them to believe it, we have to instill that belief through our own belief, what we believe. So when I say to a young person, they might just do the smallest action. They might open a door for me as I'm coming through a hallway. That has to be recognised, and that is an action. It's a show of leadership, and I have to believe that young person has the capacity and the ability to be a leader. And if I don't believe it, then I'm just another person standing in the field. I have to carry that umbrella with me, and I have to genuinely believe it. And we have young people, you see their thought processes when they're sitting on a bus and a facilitator turns to them and says, that's leadership. There it is right there. And the young person's thinking oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. Instead of turning around and just sort of repetitively saying, yeah, you're a leader and you're a leader and you're a leader. It's that genuine belief that really, really drives something within a young person. When they see you believe in them, it's probably the most powerful thing I've seen.
That's great.
Because at the end of the day, leadership isn't about roles or titles or name tags.
Exactly right.
It's about influence.
That's right.
That's always related to an action.
100%. Yeah. 100%. And just though you find that those young people who are at risk and vulnerable have far more leadership capabilities because they have so much more life experience.
Well, they're also very creative.
Exactly right. Exactly,
They have unleashed their creativity in
exactly
the way.
right.
And you're just trying to harness it. They're not
Yep.
asleep, whereas the other demographics of youth can be asleep and you're trying to wake them up. you
Definitely.
know?
Yeah, and at times there's just those barriers in place for young people.
Yeah.
You know, barriers might be, you know, parents, they might be the confounds of where you live, your environment, whatever it is. We find a lot of at-risk young people don't have those barriers. They're so free that, you know, they are just a ball of energy and you just need to guide that ball like a pinball machine down the right path. And the difference you can make.
You often talk about, and this is very similar to, you've got language around it, there's being wild good versus wild bad. Do you want to share that? Because I'd love to hear what Will's thoughts are if it resonates with him.
So I think teenagers have all this wild energy. So that they have energy, they have vitality, they have creativity, and they have this, no one's ever done it before. Whether people have done it before or not, young people think no one's ever done this before. So they have this kind of thing. Now that energy can either be used for good, like amazing things on planet Earth, or it can be used for bad. The energy is neutral, but I often think it's how it's coaxed, it's how it's nurtured, it's how it's
100%.
Spoken about, it's how it's treated as to which way it actually goes.
Yep.
And if we will actually, I suppose, call into being the goodness, they will channel that into that. That's
100%.
my belief.
100%. And I see it all the time. Like we teach our young people in a practical version that the frontal lobe of a young person isn't fully developed, and that frontal lobe contains your decision-making capabilities. And so when these young people hear that, they're like, oh, okay, yeah. So we guide them that through your impulse decisions. You know, if you're aware that you're not you don't have that ability to make good decisions when it counts, when you're under pressure or your peers are around, if you know that, then in those decisions, you should be able to switch on and go, oh, this is one of those times. But what guides it is young people have this energy, which I suppose we call an impulse behind them, that when they have that decision-making capability, they either impulsively jump into the wrong decision, or it takes them so much more energy to impulsively jump back and go, no, I'm going to reflect here. What we find with JCP is it's so much easier to get them to jump impulsively into something that's good and provide that something good because they love it. So I'll give you an example. We've got a camp coming up in 2 weeks. And I really hope that this doesn't come out before then. But if it does and the young people are listening, don't listen. But, you know, one of the activities on camp is that we go and kidnap an elderly resident from an aged care home. And so these elderly residents, they've worked with some of these boys before, and the boys will genuinely believe that they're going to go and coerce an elderly resident to get in the van and come do this activity. Now, they don't know that the elderly resident's already pre-planned and they're going to be getting into the van. You know, they've agreed to it already.
Already done the risk assessment.
Yeah, that's right. So, but it'll play out, and these boys will genuinely think they're going to go and take this elderly resident and convince him to get into a van and come down to Riverbend Park in Launceston and climb the, what do you call it, the skywalk. And when he gets to the top, that group will win a prize. And the first group to do it, you know, wins that prize. And so these young people, they're engaging in a positive activity, which is getting this elderly resident out of his aged care home into a fun and impulsive activity. And then at the end of it, this elderly resident's going to be so happy and give them high fives. But that's an activity where, you know, it's that impulse jump that it will turn into that good effect. And we will sit down at the end of the activity and say, look at what you did. Yeah. Look at the impact you've had on this guy who's now standing here saying, thank you for getting me out today. Thank you for doing something with me. And then they get that selfish feeling that I talk about, that, oh, wow, we impulsively jumped into something. It was fun, engaging, awesome, but it was good. And then just through those small actions, we build on that to go, well, here are some other ideas and concepts that we are not going to give you. We're actually going to help you do in your life that are exactly the same. They're fun, engaging, they're impulsive, but there's good in them. I relate to it.
And I think that goodness, like you talk about it being selfish, I actually don't think that. I think goodness is life. So when we get that feeling on the inside of, oh, man, that was just so good because we've done something good, I actually think that that's just an expression of the fullness of life, of what we're actually supposed to be living. Like, it's joy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's giggles, it's laughter, but it's just life overflowing. And I kind of go, shouldn't we all be living that way? Like, shouldn't we all be bubbling over with goodness?
Well,
so
I feel,
when we're good,
100%.
and I just think, wouldn't our culture be so much healthier if we were all bubbling around with that kind of sense of life and goodness than what some of
I think I
cultures.
use the term selfish because we seem like every day we get caught up into this structured life and routine. And when you fall out of that and something good happens, it's not the norm. So you have to come up like, oh, this is not normal. I shouldn't be feeling
give
this
everybody permission to do good life.
Oh, 100%,
Yeah.
But sort of when everyone's not and you're that person, like if you look at my social media pages, it looks like my life is just bang, 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 all this stuff happening when, in reality, it's probably not all the time happening. It's just, it's submitted that way.
You are an ever-ready battery, though.
But people will look at that and go, well, that's not the norm. So if I stand up and I try and say that what I do, I do it just because that's good, then people, I don't know, I feel that people would judge me. But I agree with what you're saying, and I probably use the term.
That. People can do. They might not do the big stuff like you do, but every day they can do something kind. 100%. Every day they can do something good.
And everyone should be encouraged to do that.
And every day they can speak or call out something in somebody else. So
definitely.
Whether it be a kid at the bus stop, they can sort of say, "Hey, love your cool." I don't know, whatever, haircut or do you know what I mean? Or how was your day? Or that you can constantly find good things that people have done.
100%. Exactly right. And what it's about teaching people, I suppose you're teaching me now that that's not selfish to be able to do. But I suppose the lesson out of that is that it should become the norm.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be a teachable thing. It should just be a value instilled by parents in their kids every day. Why it's not? Well, we don't instill a lot in our kids. So, maybe that's something that needs to grow.
Yeah.
Do you get angry about the way that the society and culture has like a narrative about our young people?
Yes. Yeah, I do. In particular, certain factions of young people. Youth offenders is a big one. I mean, I've been a police officer for 7 years and I get really frustrated at youth offenders because I see the impact they have on the community. Mm-hmm. But then I also get really frustrated at the perceptions that other people have of youth offenders because I see the complete other side of things where, like I had a conversation with a kid last night about stealing a car and taking it up to Rochelle and burning it out. Now, for the person whose car was stolen, that is a life-changing event and that they would have so many negative things to say on that young person, and so they're right. They rightfully should. And for anyone else looking at that crime, that is a really big deal, and they would think negatively of that. That we do that as a society, but the background of this young person is just so traumatic.
Yeah.
And I sit in a position of being a police officer where I shouldn't be sitting here saying, we can't be looking at the, he knows what's right and wrong. Yeah. He knows this and it's right. Young people know what's right and wrong. He knew when he took the car that it was the wrong thing to do. But whilst it doesn't excuse the offence, it provides my work provides insight into how that can happen and the value system behind how it can happen. And I get really frustrated with society sometimes because we don't help that problem.
Yeah.
No,
it is a complete cycle.
Yeah.
And even with, another big frustration, not that I ever dwell on frustrations much, but migrant young people, I can walk into a store with three, I'm not saying anyone in our society is racist, but I can walk into the store with three white Australian kids and have no issues. I guarantee you I walk in with 4 or 5 African boys that work with us, and we're followed every store by security. And like if there's a security member in the store, we are trained on. And and that's the perception of people in the store that move out of our way, that, you get a lot of negative perceptions in the community. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is often, and it genuinely creates a perception for these young people. I have boys that just arrive in Australia, and when I go and see them, they're so happy, like a new life, new me, and they've never heard of, one boy moved here a year and a half ago, and the front pages he read, the first front page newspaper was about an African youth gang crisis in Victoria. And it was all over the news at the time. And for him, he came from a place where everyone was of coloured skin.
Yeah.
And so an African youth gang was just non-existent for him.
Yeah.
When he moved here, he was so excited about Australia and starting a new life. But then this perception grew and grew on him to the point where before he engaged in our program, he genuinely believed that every time he went out, he was viewed as a gangster or street rat or a kid where, you know, there was this perception that he was involved in a youth gang. And he just literally immortalized it. Yeah. He made that him. And he would walk around with his pants down and his hood on, and because that was the perception that he owned. And you know, the first thing he did when he got here was connect with like-minded kids. And, of course, they're African. They speak the same language and they're friends, and they started walking around. They all started just to own that perception. And we've obviously worked heavily with that group and tried to break it down as much as possible to the point now where I'm so confident that that is not the case anymore. But we as a society create that. I feel like sometimes we create our own problems, especially with young people. I don't know if that's where you wanted to go with that.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah, and I feel that young people, there's definitely sections of society. We see it with policing so often, and that is that there are people that really don't know how other people live in our community. We wouldn't know that a 10 minutes drive from where we are here in the CBD of Launceston, that there are kids that live in houses with no floors because they've pulled the wooden floors up so they can keep the wood fire going during winter. Like that would not even fall into the perception of some people in our community, that then going to steal some wood palings off a fence, seems like an action to keep them warm. But for other people, it's, look at that little
youth offending again.
Yeah, exactly right. And and at times youth offending is youth offending. That's just what it is. But there are other times when it's not, and in an ideal world, we would all be on the same wage and everyone would be equal, and we would be, as a community, we'd be raising all these kids together, because we know that some people, it's funny, in our society we need a license to drive a car and a license to have a firearm, and we need a license to do everything, but anyone can have a kid, and there's no book, there's no, and all these people can have children, and it's their right to, and, bless that right. But some people are inadequate in looking after young people, and there should be a course that is mandatory for some people, because there are young people living in our community. I'm not talking about in other countries. I'm talking about here in Tasmania that have no food and that aren't clean and that are in unsafe environments and that have no support services, and we see it on a daily basis. And as a community, we hide it. But
I think it's even deeper than that. I think that it's that there's a culture of speak around young people. So even if you're not disadvantaged, you very quickly move towards language which is negative towards young people,
100%.
as opposed to seeing that they're a great gift and this is the next generation. So it's like when my kids were naughty, so in their teen years, it wasn't so much about what they had done. It was about trying to understand and getting them to understand why they did it, and then why spend that energy on that when they could spend their energy on something else, or what needed helped or what needed addressed. So sometimes I feel like the disadvantaged they don't get the support or the confrontation maybe the parents may need to change their parenting, because I think as a culture, none of us are really parenting youth as well as what we could be.
Oh, 100%.
Did you know?
Yeah,
I kind of get what I'm saying?
I do, yeah, I 100% get that.
So we do let people off the hook, but in a sense I think we let them off the hook because we're also trying to let ourselves off the hook.
Yeah, definitely. This is probably not as relevant, but it's a comment that
just go for it anyway. Go on.
But we as a society have become so reliant on the government. As a young person, the government need to supply this support service, and the government need to supply funding. Oh, you've got a really good idea. Well, where's the government funding for it? We forget that it's a community that raises a young person. Yeah. It's the corny quote, young people make up 25% of society, but 100% of the future. That's where investment lies, and investment of time, not money. It takes a council worker who's mowing the lawns to stop for 3 minutes and kick the footy with a kid who's walking home from school. It takes the neighbour to knock on the door and ask, hey, how's your homework going? I can spare 10 minutes tonight. You know, we get so caught up in watching Big Brother or our Netflix series or whatever's happening that we forget that there's young people in our communities that we need to invest time in, because that's the future of the world. And I know that's corny and big, and as soon as you say a big statement like that, everyone just sort of loses focus on
eyes glaze over.
Yeah, exactly right. But it is, you know. You know, we forget that those small actions impact someone. I met a young boy. I did a school seminar this last week, and I met him 5 or 6 years ago. All I did, I was walking past the wharf and I stopped and I went fishing with him for like 5 minutes. And we were laughing, joking around. He now attends a school in Devonport. I went in to do a seminar. He's like, hey, I know you. You were that guy that went fishing with me like 5 or 6 years ago. I did not recognise him from a bar of soap. And it was only after I left and I really thought about it that I was like, oh, that's right. Yeah, I think I remember going fishing with that kid. And that small action had stuck in that boy's mind. He remembered my face. He remembered exactly what we spoke about. He was so invested in it. And like that was nothing in my life. It was nothing out of my day to do that. It was more because I like fishing and I was like, oh, I've got 10 minutes to spare walking past the pub and I was going to go fishing with this guy. And that's what happened. And I wasn't in the pub drinking, just so you know, I was walking past. But, you know, those actions can be done by anyone in the community. We do get caught up sometimes in thinking, oh, I'm never going to, you know, I'm not going to ask my neighbours if I can help out tutor the young person because that's weird and that's strange. And, you know, we forget that it's, you know, young people grow because of the experience and the mirror images they have of people they meet. And if they only spend time with their parents, then the parents' values and belief systems only lie on that young person. Whereas young people need everyone around them to be able to grow, nurture themselves, to be able to, to form a really solid sense of themselves. Because without that, they can become so structured and they fall into a cycle. And that's where a lot of young people who are disadvantaged or at risk or vulnerable, they're in a cycle because you can't take them out of that environment. Or if you do, you're just giving them an experience. There's no genuine impact. It's just a young person that, you know, we're taught that it's 3% of the brain. When you teach a young person something new, it goes into the 3%. And unless you continually teach it over a period of time, it'll just fall. That 3% needs to fill up with new information. It won't sink down into that 97%, which is their environment and what they're surrounded with.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I can tell a young person they're a leader, but if they go home for the next 3 months and spend the same time with the same, you know, adult figure in their life that believes that they're not a leader, then it doesn't matter how many times I say it, we need to, and we will do a lot of work in young people's environments. We need that person to believe that and people around them to believe it as well. We go into young people's rooms and strip it out, put motivational posters up on the wall, wash the sheets, reorganise the wardrobe, and then have a chat to the parents. What's going on? This is what your kid did this week. How amazing is he? And we force them to tell us how amazing their kid is. You know, and some parents it's hard to do and others it's quite easy. But, you know, it takes a community to raise a child if we want that person to be in good stead. And
there has to be more positive things than just looking at the prison systems, you know, at looking at that cycle. I think that we have to be a little bit more creative. 100%.
And not to say that the prison system is inadequate, because we, you know, the Ashley Youth Detention Centre in Tassie do a great job of, educating young people, teaching them a skill set. Their school there is great. And I spoke to a young person yesterday that's been to Ashley 26 times since he was 10. He's 17 now.
That's crazy.
26 times. But he refers to his education at Ashley. He's made, in his bedroom, his videos showing me all these wooden projects that he's made, the pens that he's produced, and he's passionate about that. Some of the best times of his childhood were in Ashley. And for young people, that's great. What's not good is that he went back 25 times after his first visit, because when he's released, there's nothing there for him. And prior to him being admitted into Ashley, there's nothing there as a precursor either. You know, a meeting with a social worker once a week does not cut it. And a meeting with Youth Justice once a month, once you leave, does not cut it, especially when the meeting is at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and you know that young person's sleeping at that time, and they didn't rock up, so it shows they're disinterested. Well, what 15-year-old is going to be, So, yeah, I agree with you. There's, I think there is that lack of proper services. I think there's a lot of services.
It's just community, though, even more than services. It's community.
Yes,
and it's
that's right.
It's people who care, who actually want to make that deep impact. So they
100%.
actually want to be in relationship.
Yeah, a lot of people that want to provide an experience, taking a young person out, good time, putting them back in and then leaving. Not a lot of people providing that genuine impact. Because that's what, going fishing with a kid one-off, 5-6 years later, it called on it. And he called up about it and in a seminar said, I remember you. But what impact did I have on him? Not a lot. I don't believe over that time. But it may have contributed to a whole heap of other people whose chips in as well.
Yeah.
We've experienced that at Tail Race where, we've employed youth over the 12 years that we've been open and it's a nice motherhood statement to say you're going to take on.
Yeah.
But the actual day-to-day work is hard work.
Yeah.
It's really hard work.
But it is,
and the customers aren't always appreciative of
100%.
the service or or of the hard work that you're putting in or what you're trying to do because what they want is top-notch service down here. But if you're going to be talking about impacting a young person's life, that there's this period of time called impact.
That's right, exactly.
Which is messy.
It's messy. Yeah, it is.
But it's where the beauty happens if you can persevere. And if the young person will persevere and you persevere, eventually there's this beautiful ending.
Yep, exactly right. I mean, 100% agreement with that. 100%.
Very good. I felt like we could be here all night talking. I feel like as if there's heaps to cover.
It's dangerous.
I know. We might need to get you back for a part 2, I think.
Do it.
Do you want to, what have you got coming up that's exciting? What can you tell us?
Okay, well, so the biggest program that we run is our Beast program, which is this logo here. We've got 11 boys graduating from that program in next week.
That's so cool.
It is, it's going to be, it's for me the most successful program I've ever run, and I'm sending you guys an invite to it, so you don't have to attend, but it is at the Tail Race Centre. But for me, it's an opportunity to really recognise 11 boys that have done amazing work. We're talking about young people who fall into that at-risk category, who are vulnerable and who are now student leaders, winning state awards, like raising $50,000, no youth offending for the period of time involved, and are now graduating into bigger and better roles. So
cool.
That's probably the biggest event coming up. And then obviously my shout out is that we, at JCP really drive and pride ourselves on providing genuine impact programs. So whether that's in a school environment or outside, if anyone listens to this and is in a school environment, the value system that we can impart on young people is something that you should instill in your school, and you should definitely get us in.
That's great. So how do you guys get funded?
So we are funded purely by those school seminars.
Yeah.
So we run school seminars, but
So
you're
not government funded.
We're not government funded. No, we don't receive funding from.
So it's all self-resourced.
It's self-resourced, and we are very fortunate over recent times to have some people approach us and say that they're really keen to help out in some way, whether that's sponsoring a young person to attend the program, or by, the Egans, who are amazing people, Mick and Celine Egan.
They are great people.
Donating food that we help give to our young people who don't have food across the state. So, through Juice Plus. So even programs like that are amazing.
So on this point, we would like to invite people, if you'd like to donate to JCP Empowering Youth, to donate. But what we want you to do is we want you to give a gift that you can be proud of. So don't just sort of think about giving $10 or $20, but this is a human life that we're talking about. These are young people's lives. This is the future. This is kids that deserve a chance. So I'm just going to ask you to donate and to give big and to be generous and to be loving and to just really sow into this next generation, because they're worth it and the programs are good and the impact is great. And so please give big, B-I-G.
Very well said.
Thank you. That was very well said. I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, I mean, resource, everything takes resource, and we often think that love doesn't cost, but I have experienced that love is one of the most costly things in the world, and we can spend a lot of money on our homes and on our cars and on our lifestyle, but nothing is as important as a human life, and nothing is as important, I think, than our children and our young people. So I just think we should give big to those sort of things because they have big impacts. And in the middle of all that, when you give, there's a mystery that happens, that it's goodness, and we come to life.
It's not selfish.
It's not selfish at all.
Cool.
It's an amazing transaction that happens on the inside.
So what we'll do is we'll link some details for people that are going to give a gift that they'd be proud of. And so then hopefully we can see some more young lives transformed, trajectories changed.
Yeah,
I
and
appreciate
vision
that.
expanded.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mate, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been
Thanks
so
for
much
having
fun.
me. Yeah, that was awesome. I loved it. I was so nervous starting. And now I'm like, well, if that was it, then I didn't have nothing to be nervous about.
We'll have to have you back sometime soon.
Please do.
Okay.
We'll have to have some of your young people.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, please.
Because I'm wanting to transition out of this and see young people around the
Yes.
table.
That boy that I spoke about that's been in Ashley 26 times, he's coming to the Tail Race Centre. I don't know if we're still filming, but he's coming to the Tail Race Centre on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So he's wanting to start sharing his story and doing things. So
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
thank you.